Hello to all my wonderful chemistry students. This is for chemistry and pre-AP. While y'all are distant learning, we are moving on to unit 10 of the notes. And so I am going to jump on here and explain everything. So this unit is called thermochemistry, or sometimes called thermodynamics. Essentially thermo means heat. And so you're talking about heat and heat transfer and how heat affects everything. This is chemistry, so specifically in chemistry. But to understand that, we do have to understand the overall basics of energy and heat. So we have some vocabulary words. That's where your notes start out first, is the vocabulary words. Now, I will say this unit is super applicable to your life. You should hopefully be able to come up with tons of examples of each of these. So the first vocabulary word is called the law of conservation of energy. And it's simply stating that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transferred into different states, or one form to another, however you want to look at it. So it's kind of like the conservation of mass. If you remember that we can't just create or destroy matter, that it's already here, we're just transferring it. So in a chemical reaction, that's why we have to balance. Because I can't have two carbon atoms on one side and all of a sudden only have one on the other side. That either implies that I destroyed it, if it's going from the reactant side that has two to the product side that has one, or if I go from one carbon to two of them, then all of a sudden I created it. And if we could create things, we would create gold. So it's the same exact law, but now we're talking about energy specifically. So to understand energy, this is more of a physics concept, and if you try to Google it, you're probably going to find a lot of physics videos. But energy is just simply the ability of an object to do work. And so I myself have energy. I get my energy from food, but I can do work. I can lift the pin. I can go run. I can push things. I can lift heavy objects like a couch or something when moving. Now, obviously, I need somebody else on the other end. I'm not sitting here claiming I'm Wonder Woman. But I have energy in me, and I have the ability to do work. Other things have the ability to do work as well. Your car can do work. It can move and get you from A to B. So to understand the definition of work, to kind of understand what it's talking about, is another physics term. So work is the ability to move an object against a force. So we have force equals mass times, work equals force times distance, and then force equals mass times acceleration. But work equals force times distance. And so you're applying a force for some distance, and that would be work. Again, kind of a physics definition, but still you're starting to hopefully get an idea of what we're talking about. So essentially we're talking about how things are able to happen. And so there's different forms of energy. I've already given you some examples of them, you just don't realize it. So we have thermal energy. In your notes, it also refers to it as internal energy, and it is the total kinetic and potential energy in an object. And then you have potential energy, is the energy of an object due to its position or internal structure. So the internal structure part is more talking about chemistry and chemical bonds. They have potential energy in them. But just in general, to kind of understand what it's talking about, if I hold this pen up, it can fall and move. It has the ability to move, and so it has potential energy when it's up here. If I were to set it down on this chair, it still has some potential energy because it could fall off the chair. But if it was flat on the ground, it would have nowhere to fall, so it wouldn't have potential energy. Chemical energy is a type of potential energy released during a chemical reaction. Matter has potential energy since energy is absorbed to break a chemical bond. That's endothermic, and energy is released when a chemical bond forms, which is exothermic. So this is now specifically talking about chemistry. You probably want to go back and reread the chemical energy definition a lot, because that's kind of where we're going to be focusing, is endothermic, exothermic, those energies. And then also kinetic energy is the energy of an object due to its motion. So up here, pin's not moving, zero kinetic energy, lots of potential energy. When I drop it and it starts to move, it now has kinetic energy because it's falling, and it's losing its potential energy. When it hits the ground, it has no potential energy, and it also should have no kinetic energy. It could like bounce or something, and then, but we're not going to get too into it. I want to make sure that you're just understanding the basic definitions. Then we have temperature. It is a measure of the average kinetic energy of the particles in a sample of matter. So if you can think all the way back to when we talked about solids, liquids, and gases, we talked about them having movement. In solids, we said they vibrate only. They're in there and they're just vibrating, the little individual atoms. And then liquids, we said that they vibrate and they rotate. And so that's how liquids have more movement. They have different types of movement. And then gases vibrate, rotate, and they translate, which means that they move back and forth, up and down, all around. And it kind of explains why their properties are the way they are. One has fixed volume and fixed mass, or fixed volume and fixed shape, and then fixed volume but not a fixed shape, and then one that doesn't have a fixed volume or a fixed shape. And so that's kind of explaining all of those. So if you think of that, about that movement, everything has movement and everything has a temperature, and the temperature is measuring that movement, how much is going on. And then we have heat. Heat is energy. So heat is energy. It's just in transit as a result of temperature differences. So heat is a type of energy. That's important for you to understand, because I think a lot of kids think it's something different, and it's not. So that's kind of the vocabulary words that I want to go over on that first page. I don't think I'm missing any. There's more to talk about with heat, but we'll get into it with the next video.